All right, well, we're like 5 past, so I think we should get started. Everybody, welcome to the September Photo Society meeting. Andy is off tonight. He's on vacation, so I'm going to be hosting this. We have 2 speakers tonight. We have Jim Clements, who will be showing us some images from Bonaire and Curacao with a focus on night photography and homemade equipment. And then we have Dawn McDonald going to be talking about her recent trip diving in the Northern Red Sea. So I guess, Dawn, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. And I'm just going to apologize a little bit in advance because I've been really busy at work, and this is kind of just going to be, here's what I did on my summer vacation type of a presentation. But I have a lot of pictures, and if anybody has questions as we're going, you know, feel free to ask me questions. I did put the settings on them, but I'm kind of winging it, so. Let's see. Oh, you have disabled the participant screen sharing.
What? Oh, it's because I didn't make you a co-host. I've been chatting too much. I'll do it. All right, you should be good to go now.
Okay.
All right, how do I know if they can hear me?
We can hear you. Okay, can you guys see that?
I can, yes.
Okay. Hopefully I can advance it. Okay, so in August, which is supposedly the best time to go, I went to the Northern Red Sea on the Aggressor, and it was spectacular. There were 4 dives a day. We did a night dive every day. We did 3 dives on the Thistlegorm. And this picture that you see here is just an example of how healthy the reefs are. This was our checkout dive, and I mean, there are just fish, and the reefs are super healthy. They're as healthy as they are in Indonesia, in my opinion. Egypt does a really good job of protecting the Red Sea. The entirety of the Red Sea in Egypt is protected, and it's protected by their National Park Service, their military, and they have a couple of other agencies that that work all together to protect the Red Sea, and it's been that way for a long time. And you can tell by how beautiful the reefs are, and they're, you know, it's loaded with fish. Lots of blue spotted stingrays. And I discovered that if you just kind of sit there while they're snuffling around trying to eat, they get used to you. And I mean, all of these pictures that you're going to see were shot with my 15mm fisheye. I have a Nikon D850 and a Nauticam housing and 2 CNC YSD3 strobes. So all these pictures were shot with the 15mm fisheye. So I was inches from his nose. And after you sit there for a while, they don't care. And in fact, I had one, the one that you saw, this one here, that was very interested in seeing himself in the dome of my housing. And when I spent some time with him, he kept coming right up to the dome and touching it and then swimming away. And then when I turned to swim away, he actually followed me and kept swimming back up to the dome again. So that was a fun interaction that I had with him. This is the Red Sea's full of wrecks, and this is one of the wrecks called the Barge. And it sort of reminded me of the New Hampshire a little bit because it's you know, it's hardly anything left but ribs, but it's loaded with life. There are all kinds of things living on it and around it. And it's in 45 feet of water, so it's relatively shallow. And you can go around that thing 10 times, which I did, and see something new every time you go around it. So that was a great dive, and we did a night dive on it also. These are 2 blue chevron butterfly fish that were on the barge. There's a scorpion fish there in the middle. Some squirrel fish that were underneath it. This is George. George might be the biggest eel that I've ever seen. His head was about the size of a basketball, maybe bigger. He lives underneath the barge with his wife, Georgina, who is almost as big, but not quite. And there are lots and lots and lots of eels living on the barge that they believe are the offspring of George and Georgina. But Georgina was particularly photogenic because, I mean, I cropped it out, but up in the left side, you can see some red soft coral. And there were all those red squirrel fish around her. So she was all, you know, surrounded by beautiful colors. This is another wreck. It sank at Shag Rock, which was like an undersea kind of a, not a mountain, but an undersea, more like an atoll. And it sank in 1876. So there are a number of wrecks there that sank in the 1800s, and they are they're beautiful. They're completely covered with coral and soft coral and fish. But this picture, I actually went inside the wreck a little bit because I saw all these silver sides in there, and I was trying to get a better picture than this of them swarming around in there. But so this is the Dunraven. And the Kingston. The Kingston was really, really nice. It was a huge masted steamship. And so there are 2 huge wooden masts, but there were also boilers on it. But it's part of it is up, this part of it is upright. This is the upper deck. And then, as you can see, it's just covered in coral and life. This is my friend taking a picture of the Antheus. All those little black specks are Antheus fish on the top of the Kingston. And it was very windy for the first 4 days of our trip, like really, really windy. And so the visibility was kind of not great. These are the Antheus. You can see all the hard corals there on the stern. These are batfish at Shark Reef. And Shark Reef is, Shark Reef, Yolanda Reef, and Jackson Reef are 3 of, they told us they were 3 of the top 5 dive sites in the world. Because of that, there were lots and lots of boats. So at this dive, which was Shark Reef, they got us up at 5 in the morning, and we were in the water at 5:30 in order to avoid the other 19 boats that were anchored at this site. So we were 9 people on our boat. It was only half full. But if you assume that the other boats, which were about the same size, had anywhere from 10 to 20 passengers, that's a lot. That's like 200 people potentially in the water at the same time. So Aggressor does a really good job of catering to their passengers and getting us, you know, you have to get up really early, but we were in the water by ourselves. We didn't, you know, at the end of the dive, all of those other boats were just getting into the water, and it was kind of a zoo, but it was right when we were getting out. So it ended up being okay. But this reef was pretty spectacular. It starts out as more reef-like, and then it turns into a steep wall. And there are batfish and snappers and groupers, all schooling, huge schools of them off in the blue. This is a green turtle at Shark Reef. This was a night dive at a dive site called the Temple. I was taking a picture of the scorpion fish and I didn't actually see that little blue puffer sitting up above him when I took the picture. And I can't, I haven't been able to find out exactly what that little blue puffer is. They have a whole bunch of blue puffers there, and the dive guide, he didn't know what it was either. He said it was a masked puffer, but it's not a masked puffer. It might be a starry puffer. I'm not sure. Red Sea anemone fish, just because everybody loves a clownfish. Spanish dancers, for all you nudie lovers. The only nudie that I can love is one that's 1 foot long. Sailfin tang. All of these were on a night dive. The last few. Another little blue puffer. Blue spotted boxfish. Parrotfish. And a whale shark, which made me decide for certain that I'm going to go back to the Galapagos next year. So, this was.
Is the whale shark chasing something? Like a little fish?
No, that's a little pilot fish. So the
Okay.
pilot fish will swim with sharks and mantas, you know, bigger fish for protection.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, and there's only one, so it's actually kind of comical. You know, usually you'll see a few, three or five or something, but there's only one here. So everybody thinks that he wants to eat him, but he probably
Nice
can't
picture.
even see him. Another one. So I don't know if you all know about photographing whale sharks, but the challenging part about it is that you have to be close enough for your strobes to light them, but not so close that they don't fit in the frame. So I have a number of, I mean, I was right on top of him, and I have a bunch of pictures where he's cut off, like his tail is cut off, because I was so close. And then like this one, I was like a foot over him. His tail hit me when he was going by when I was taking this picture. And it doesn't look that way because of the fisheye, but he was about, I think it's a she was about 25 feet long. And that's our happy dive master. This is the thistlegorm. I believe this is the captain's cabin on the deck of the thistlegorm. And I don't know if you know about the thistlegorm, but if you're interested, there's lots of stuff online about it. It was sunk by German fighter planes. They bombed it in 1941. It had sailed from Glasgow. Because at this time during the war, the Italians and the Germans were, they pretty much had control over the Mediterranean. So the thistlegorm decided that it was going to sail the long way around, and went all the way around the Horn of Africa and came up through the Red Sea. It was waiting to go through the Suez Canal, but before it could go through the canal, another ship, I think it was also bombed. It was either bombed or it crashed in the Suez. And so they had to wait for that ship to clear. So while they were waiting for that ship to clear the Suez, the thistlegorm anchored in near Ras Mohammed and which was supposed to be a safe zone. So they were there for about a month waiting to go through the Suez Canal. And then the Germans found them there and bombed them on October 6th. When they bombed them, this ship is 415 feet long, and it has 4 big holds. They were carrying war supplies, British war supplies, to Egypt. So the bombs hit the hold where all of the artillery and the armaments were kept. So the ship, it was a huge explosion. It was carrying motorcycles, trucks, jeeps, boots, rail cars, locomotives. So the locomotives got thrown like 100 feet off the deck, and the visibility was pretty bad when we were there. So we couldn't go off to the locomotives because you might not be able to get your way back. And then also the currents can be pretty strong there. They weren't bad when we were diving on it. And even if the current is strong, they have a way that you can dive it so that you're hiding behind the ship for the dive so that you don't get swept away in the current. But we didn't have to worry too much about that. So the picture on the left is I'm in 100 feet looking up. So that's the deck of the ship near hold number 4. This is at the blast zone, and that part of the ship is going straight up towards the surface. The picture's not so good, but it was pretty impressive when you were down there. And then the picture on the right is one of the anti-aircraft guns that were on the stern of the ship. It's apparently a bomb. I don't know if it's live. Probably not, but right in this area, which was the blast site, you can see there's all kinds of bombs and artillery shells. There's a truck. A tank. This tank was also at the blast site. And much smaller than I thought. I didn't realize that they were so small. Here's some fish pretending to be the bomb, I think. And the Jeep. I mean, this is officially now my favorite wreck, and I think it's because of the history. I mean, just seeing all of this stuff on there is pretty incredible. It's one of the motorcycles. There are a lot of motorcycles, and they have them all stacked in the back of trucks. There's another one. It's the anchor chain and the winch on the bow. And you can see all the lines in the background. Those are all the liveaboards that tied up to it. So when we first got there, there were only two other ships. So there were 3 ships. So we didn't really, there were some people down there, but the wreck is so big that you're not on top of each other. The next day when we left, there were another probably 8 more liveaboards had come in the night. This is a yellow moray that lives in the winch, in the anchor winch. And I didn't realize until I took the picture that it was covered in soft coral. There's some of the artillery shells. The truck. This is, I don't remember the dive site, but this was towards the end of the trip. And we did a night dive and then a daytime dive at this site. And during the night dive, we went by this big rock, big, huge pile, big rock that looked like a chimney. And it was covered in lionfish. I mean, so many, I was diving in just a shirt. The water was 82 degrees. So I just had a shirt. So my legs were bare. And I kind of steered clear of that rock because there was just so many lionfish. So the next morning we did this dive before we left. And when I went by this rock, I saw that there was a cave and I looked inside and all of these fish were there. And that explains the lionfish. And there is one actually in the bottom left corner. I didn't realize that he was there, but there's a lionfish down there.
Are the lionfish native there or are they native there?
You know, I don't know. Somebody else asked me that too. I'm not sure if they're invasive or if they're native. So those nudies on the left are called Cutie Risbeckia, and they always come in two. So if you look, there's one in the back. And I think that picture's not bad for being taken with fisheye. And then another clownfish. And that's it. That's all that I had. That went by fast. Do you guys have any questions about anything? No.
Anything?
I can see why you like the thistleworm because it's so cool seeing, like, particularly because it's been down there for so long. Like it's always cool seeing stuff crusted over, but like just the different vehicles and all that stuff is really, it's like, you know, guess what the shape is, right?
Yeah, I mean the history of it is it's just incredible to see it. And we did 3 dives on it. We did an afternoon, we did a night dive, and then we did one first thing in the morning. So I was actually, because I get up so early, and they let me go by myself. So I was actually on the thistlegorm all by myself for like at least 10 minutes before my buddy, you know, my same ocean buddy jumped in the water. And then, so that was pretty great. The visibility was a little bit better, but it was still pretty bad. And I have a lot more pictures. I thought that I had too many because there was going to be 3 of us talking tonight and somebody couldn't make it. So I have so many more pictures from this trip. I mean, there's just so much to photograph, and it's prolific with life of all kinds. It's really great. And the wrecks, I'm not a huge wreck person, but the wrecks are amazing because especially the ones that sank in the 1800s, I mean, they're beautiful because they're so covered in hard and soft corals, and they're very cool. And they're pretty big too, so you can penetrate most of them.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dawn. That was fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
And Dawn actually has a show coming up starting October 8th. Is that what it is? To give a little plug here?
Yes, October 8th to the 27th, I have a solo photography show at the Rockport Art Association. And it's going to be, I decided it's going to be all underwater pictures. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there will be a reception on the 16th. So if you're interested and you're in the area, stop by.
For sure. It'll be a great time. Looking forward to it.
Okay. We'll stop sharing.
Perfect. All right. Jim, you are up, my friend.
All right. I don't know if I did. Okay. All right.
There you go. Thank you.
Telling me that. So all these cameras, you can put snoots on the back to look at the screen. This is an expensive one. It's almost the same price as the housing, but it's got some optics built in. Way too pricey for my taste. So, oh, now why won't it go anymore? There we go. So you can go out and buy a rubber snoot for 20 bucks. Pop the lens out, you stick it on the back of a camera, and man, you can see a whole lot more in bright daylight. I liked it so much that I actually installed it on the shoe. So now whatever camera I drop on there, I can slide the camera around and always look through a snoot in daylight. This isn't ready for prime time, but I'm also playing around with the idea of a collapsible snoot that I can then just, snap real small and then stick it out so I can keep my eye probably a foot away from the LCD screen for focusing purposes. So little homemade stuff, works pretty good, pretty cheap. Now, night diving, usually I'm stalking stuff. So there's a standard solar light, lights up the whole ocean as you know at night. Well, I just 3D printed a little carrier to carry a red lens. I can snap it on, use the light with a red light for stalking at night, no big deal, and then pop it off if I need the bright light back again. Cost almost nothing, right? There it is, a little close up. It's just a 3D printed part, the lens drop inside, snap it on, and you're in business. I use backscatter flash a lot. I like the backscatter, but as you can tell, you have a flash and 2 video lights. I want to use the video lights for red light stalking, but I want a clear flash for photography. So I just took another plastic red filter, milled out the middle for the flash, and now I can keep that turned on. I can sort of swoop around the ocean, and obviously where those 2 red lights are looking, that's where the flash is looking to. If the red lights give me enough light to focus, I can usually get a pretty good shot at night without scaring everything to death. Here's another example. This is just a cheap flashlight with the red lens on top, but I just basically made a little piece. It holds the red lens on, and now I can take that around the ocean and sort of go hunting for little tiny creatures late at night. I'm a big night diving fan. This is a little bit more complicated. You've seen these big canister lights, right? Probably the brightest lights in the ocean. The one you're looking at has 2 switches. I've modified it so when I hold the button down, the light comes on as bright as possible, but when I let go of the button, the light goes off. So you can swim up to a fish or a crab or something, get it ready to go, slam the light on, and instead of doing flash, you can take 5 or 10 or 15 photographs, which hopefully will give you one good focus picture, and then move on, and you don't scare the creatures away. That's just a couple more pictures of it. That system, by the way, I wasn't planning on it, but here I have a spotlight of light, saw an octopus, I could turn it on, take a couple pictures and turn it off before the octopus ran for the hills. Not a flash, it's a bright light that gives the camera enough light to operate underwater. Another cheap design, if you're interested, that ring light is sold on, I think, Amazon or everybody else for about $20, $25. I think it's made for the GoPro. It's a waterproof ring light. And there's my cheapy Nikon W300 camera. So you just make a little attachment. You can mount the camera so it looks out through the ring light. So if you want to do kind of macro photography on a budget, you turn on the ring light, the camera's got a little built-in light, and you can kind of swoop around, get within 6 or 8 inches of something with the lens and get a pretty decent picture, enough light to give you something worthwhile, maybe 1/100th of a second shutter speed, which would be my minimum. Other stuff, cables for computers, for cameras, you can see the standard one, they're like $100. I've learned how to take a $10 or $20 fiber optic cable and modify the ends. You can see some of the modifications I'm still playing with as far as sizes, springs. I got a couple you can bend at 90 degrees. These are standard ends off cables. I think I can make a little adapter, 3D print, snap them on there, and bingo, you'd have your own true glass fiber, not a crappy plastic cord. There's a bet one. You can see these are full of true glass fibers. These are not plastic pieces that make you think they're going to work. And that's the example of the light coming from the ceiling, coming out of that thing. Really makes the flashes always go off, not usually go off. And eventually, I'll be able to do that with a much longer wire. So if I want to hold the flash a good distance away and maybe looking sideways, I'll be able to do it in the future. Just more of this stuff. It drives me crazy. So UV photography. Let's talk about this now. I'm starting to do UV stuff. So once again, I've got my backscatter. You had a nice presentation at the shop a couple of years ago by the guy who did this thing called Night Sea. So I bought the Night Sea glass, and then that lighter gray piece you see is just a piece I turned down so that the Night Sea will snap onto my backscatter. So now I've got a manual flash that will only flash out there in the UV range, right? No normal light. That's with the searchlights turned on, but you can see it's a nice little toy to do it. I also have a Sola UV light. And by the way, talk about how cameras get messed up. So you can see the light. As soon as you turn the light a little bit towards the camera, it's amazing how it just messes up the whole light thing. Underwater photography, you need to put a yellow lens over the camera. The TG6 is easy, you screw one in, but the one with the Sony, it doesn't. So I made up another ring I could just push this yellow Koken filter into. You can see it next to the camera and it fits on just fine. And there you can see looking through the yellow filter for UV photography at night, right? So I've got the lights rigged out, I got the flash rigged out, and I've got the camera rigged out for UV. I'll show you a couple of pictures in a few minutes. Cheap stuff, you can go out and buy these little retractable antennas on eBay for $5 or $6 a piece. And I know you're not supposed to have these rods for tapping things underwater. So you put this little thing in your pocket, and when you're out underwater, you can extend it and you have a rod for pointing things out to people. Wash it when you're done, because even though it says stainless, it's not a very good type of stainless and it does rust. But it's a nice little thing when I'm out with a new diver and I want to point things out to them. Other piece of advice, if you're looking to put buoyancy control on your camera gear, for God's sakes, don't buy those silly things they sell. Go out and get yourself some pool noodles, cut them to pieces, slap them on, and you know, they add no weight to your luggage, and they're totally, you know, you can move them to whatever you want. So on my photography, I don't use auto exposure. The camera can't figure out what it wants. A good example would be this. Here's a Nikon land camera. If I used the camera's idea, it would have, you know, really underexposed the black bird, right? The sky would be great, the branch would be great maybe, but the bird itself would be crap. So in this case, I either could do manual or switch to 2 or 3 stops of overexposure. And that's often my mission underwater too. I don't trust the auto exposure on cameras for the type of like semi-telephoto work I'm doing. Here's a good example. The camera took a picture, doesn't really know what to do, and I understand why that is. So another example of auto exposure, if I let the camera decide, do I want to get the black part of the fish properly exposed or the white part of the fish properly exposed? Well, I go to manual and I can pretty much figure it out before the fish has swam too far away. So I'm a big manual guy whenever I can do it that way. So if you have a flash, try to get your camera adjusted for the fastest shutter speed. For the Sony, it's 160. Apparently, it's a lot faster for the TG6, which is pretty cool. The TG6 won't do manual, but you can go into the menu and fix the shutter speed to a certain speed, and then you only change the f-stop knob to take your pictures. And if you're not using flash, because you have bright lights with you, like that canister light I've modified, you can just set the camera to forget the flash, but go to multiple shots, maybe, you know, 20, 30 shots per second. And you only do that because probably your focus is going to be better as the camera and the fish move a little bit relative to each other. My mantra is I can fix exposure and contrast. I can't fix sharpness. So think about those 2 bird pictures I showed you. The sharpness on those birds are exquisite. So underwater, I'm in a night dive. I take a picture, F32, now it's no good. F25, better. F20, so I probably swam away with an F20 or an F16 f-stop at a certain distance and probably kept it that way for most of the dive. Remember, I'm not doing wide angle or fisheye. I'm doing reasonable, you know, reasonable distances away. Everything I take is 2 or 3 feet from the camera, not 2 or 3 inches from the camera. So white night dive, you see the LCD screen, the artificial light makes for much better, and a lot of cool stuff only comes out of night for you guys who've never night dived. So here we go again. If you're in daytime, you see these little nests stuck in the coral, you see them all the time, you don't know what they are. When you come out at night, they're basically basket stars, and these things open up. Sometimes they're massively big. And if you shine the light, if I kept the light on this right now, the thing would begin to curl back up into a ball. Just lots and lots of these basket stars out there, a lot of fun. Now, you guys see these things in the daytime, right? You've seen these, the purple clubs, whatever, blah, 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 whole bunch of them. By the way, you see a bunch of shrimp here. We'll talk about this later, but those shrimpies are usually a lot more visible at night, especially if you can sneak up with a red light, get your camera ready, and then come back and nail them with a bright flash or a multiple light from the canister light. So these things all occur, but you know, these spiral guys are kind of out in the daytime. You see them more at night, but then at night, these are the guys you almost never see in the daytime. These guys are out, they're gorgeous. You know, they're just remarkable creatures, but I've never seen these guys out in the daytime. So, you know, was it orange-balled coral moth? Very seldom see them, never see them in the daytime. Horseshoe, whatever it's called, again, a lot more visible in the daytime. So crabs, again, in the daytime, you don't see many arrow crabs. At night, you see them nicely. Here's a nice one. This guy caught a fish. You can see the fish puffed up trying to avoid it, but the crab had him by the tail, and the crab just sat there and proceeded to eat the guy. These are the things with the, not with a macro, excuse me, not with a fisheye lens, because it would have to be so close to the crab that you probably couldn't get in there. I was at least 1.5 foot from the crab. Yes, I cropped the picture, but it allowed me to stand far enough off to get a decent picture without getting in and crowding it. You know, these guys just everywhere protecting their turf, of course. Another thing at night is the crabs, the small crabs. You see the little red guys out there. This is how I first see them. And then you try to sort of move in with the right stuff to get some good pictures. And by the way, they're fuzzy. Part of it is my focusing with my camera, but the other part is these crabs cover themselves with sand and debris trying to mask their shapes. But the point is, at night, I can do this. In the daytime, I doubt if you ever would find these guys in the daytime. Just things that come out at night are quite interesting. Obviously, at night, too, everybody and his brother is out there. You just have to go hunt them down and get a light on them and have a good time, you know, finding them. Now, starfish, if you're a daytime diver, you almost never see them. If you're a nighttime diver, they're everywhere if you wait long enough. And the brittle stars with the fuzzy arms, they tend to move slow. You get a lot of good pictures of those guys, you know, all over the sponges and so forth. Again, night photography, manual mode, as fast as shutter speed as I can have, and just adjust it and then go back for the shot you want. I mean, I really like stuff like this because you get the depth built in. Now, something about these guys, brittle stars move slow. These are, I think, ruby stars, and you don't see these only because where the brittle stars will just climb real slow, these guys will move like Tarzan. They'll flip the thing around and just swing right out of the way. So if you're hunting these with white light, you've got no chance. If you have a red light and you can kind of just barely see it, you can get your camera around and get a good line and go after a shot. So that's why I'm a big believer of red light stalking of these guys. Again, just bad picture. I would have tossed it, but it was just absolutely covered with starfish, just, you know, from wall to wall starfish. And I thought, well, that's interesting. They're really out there having a good time. Now, octopuses, if you go into DV Flamingo and you go diving like around dusk and there's nobody in the water, like here's a couple of pictures. This was taken and that was taken less than 30 seconds later at dusk. But at nighttime, if you have the right equipment, you know, you stalk these things with red light, you can often catch these guys out in the open. And then, of course, you can turn on the bright lights and get some pretty decent photographs of these guys out running around. So again, red light stalking, and then whatever you want to use for your main photography. Now, I don't use wide angle. Like I said, I can't get close enough. I'm probably at least 1 foot away from this crab, the shrimp, that are down there. If I had a fisheye, I'd have to be so close, I'd almost be touching it. And again, you see a lot of these guys are in there. The question is, can you get a lens looking in? I like my Nikon with the 105 macro for this, but these were taken with probably a TG6 or maybe the Sony. None of these were taken with the Nikon. This is exactly why I take the big heavy Nikon out looking for this kind of guys, right? The optics are amazing. But all over the place. Just these guys are out there dancing around at night. You can really find them and have a great time, and they're kind of like just remarkably fun to try to photograph. Just I never get tired of them. In fact, every time I see an enemy, I look in there and look around for them. They're just amazing. So kind of stuff I like to do. Now, same thing. This guy, he's smaller than my baby finger. The camera was easily a foot away when I took the picture. I did not want to try to get any closer. So you try to get the camera far enough away that you can still get him in there. Obviously, more night photography. It's all good stuff. Things that hide at night, you guys can figure out where the scorpion fish is in that picture. He's there. Can you see the scorpion now? Can you see the scorpion yet? Probably now you can see him, right? Again, night photography, great way to find stuff. Obviously, you know who he is, right? Great when you find those guys, of course. This is actually an apricot side slug. Lousy picture, but you never see him around. Glad to see him at night. You often see the corals in the daytime, but you don't see what happens to them until nighttime when they open up and begin to look for stuff. Just a random shot of everything: fish, shrimp, crab, fireworms. You know what fireworms are, of course. Easy to find at night. Fish that, hard to specify, but they're out there. These were all taken around DV Flamingo 2 weeks ago, except the spaghetti worm. I forget where I got him, but they're all out there. And again, the photography I'm suggesting is not wide angle, but rather you can get, you get a good picture of them, but you're far enough away not to spook them too much. Obviously, the usual things. I've got all the moray eels I want to see. Quick thing, if you're into these guys, remember when they're younger, they've got a couple stripes that will fade away. So you can kind of work your way backwards in age. And if you come across a baby, that guy's probably 1.5 inches, you can see the stripes and the blue dots, and he'll start losing them as he grows. You know what that is, the kiwi? Now, okay, UV, finally. So you guys know what a sand diver is. You see them all the time. You see them on rocks. Well, at night, lousy picture, but you see how they bury themselves? Well, if you have UV light, you have no trouble finding them, okay? The UV light, you think the sand has nothing living in it. The sand, the coral heads, couple coral heads, but the sand crawling with things all night long. You get out there with the UV lighting, and there is a nudibranch in Bonaire. This is a technique I haven't perfected yet because the night I was out, the swell was terrible. So I'll go back in November and get some better shots. This is a little guy that opens up from the bottom. I don't like the focus, but you can see you would never find that without the right UV rig. You got to be in manual mode because the camera is never going to be happy. You got to be manual mode. Decide what you want for f-stop and flash and everything, and hope you get what you want in exposure. Same thing on some brain coral. You can see you got a shrimp and a goby in there. Here's some more of my nudibranch guy just crawling around, looking grumpy. Fireworms, the usual things. Again, this is what should be a lot of fun when I get back to November. So that's my presentation, guys, as quickly as I can go. If you need me, there's my email.
Awesome, Jim.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Does anybody have any questions, comments? No?
Good. Either I bored you or so clear it was amazing.
I have a question. What kind of 3D printer are you using, and are the builds, the specifications for those just available freely at this point?
Oh,
Or you
well,
deciding-
the part I showed you, if you get in touch with me, I can send you the file, I'm sure. I've had several 3D printers. They're all the same. They're all kind of junk, but they do work. If you bug me later on, I can send you that as a file that most 3D printers would take.
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know the brand of 3D printers. Look, guys, I've been using 3D printers to make parts for all kinds of stuff for years for people, and I have a couple lying around in my barn even now. I just don't even know what brand they are. So the 3D printers still have the problem. The cheap ones, the nylon, whatever, the plastic and the ones that print like a rubbery compound are awfully pricey, and I use them. And that's why you see some parts I actually made on my lathe. It's just pretty much easier to do it that way. You
Awesome.
still there? Okay.
Anybody else?
What are some of the ways that you've made the ends for the optical cables?
Oh gosh. All right, it's a nightmare. So you can buy on Amazon, of course, you can buy like a thicker cable. It's made for I guess game guys. They have like 3 meter, 3 foot long so-called optical cables. They have the same core as the ones you spend $90 for. However, for about $20 on Amazon, you can buy cables that have true glass, like 355 strands of glass, which means when you bend it, you're not going to lose the light transmission, right? With a solid core, when you bend it, or God forbid you kink it, right? By the way, I used to work for Corning. I know more about optical fiber than I really ever want to know. So they all work fine. I've been messing around with different types of ends. One type of end that's interesting is I can put a stainless steel spring, it's quote, the right diameter, cover it with a piece of heat shrink tubing, and the little sucker pops right into the existing flash holes. Nice. And then I believe I can modify the spring to already be bent at 90 degrees. So ask me 2 or 3 months from now, and I'm going to have a little design saying, look, you do this, do that, and bingo, you're in business for your own cables. Because $90 for a 20-cent piece of plastic is, no, no, I'm not going to do it. So I think it can be done a lot cheaper and more reliable.
It's pretty cool. I like it.
But by the way, the one thing I'll go back and harp on, that canister light, which I didn't really show you how it works, that canister light puts out more photons than anything they sell. So you get that thing mounted, and the idea is to abandon flash photography, tell the camera to take multiple shots, 20, 30 shots as fast as possible. And then when you get the focus as best you can on a crab, you just jam this light on with your left thumb. The bright light comes on, the people up in space can see you underwater, but then you can take your 20 shots. And you don't need to adjust the lens because you're moving, the crab's moving. But when you get 20 shots, chances are one of your focuses will be just what you want. Okay.
Everybody good? Awesome. Well, thank you for joining tonight's meeting. Just as a reminder, we had to reschedule our photo dive since we had bad weather. It is rescheduled for October 9th, which is a Sunday at 10 a.m. Tentatively, right now, we're meeting at Old Garden if the weather holds up. If anybody wants to join, just reach out to me, dive@underseadivers.com. We'll get you all the details and get you put on the list. Otherwise, there is the Sea Rovers show this weekend, which is a really fun thing. And then obviously Don's showing is going to be happening in October. And then we will see you all at our October Photo Society meeting, which will happen on the 27th. So thanks everybody for joining us. Don, Jen, thank you so much for presenting. Greatly appreciate it. I hope everybody has a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Good
Whitney.
night. Thank you.
Thank you.